has come a very long way in terms of democracy, and that the world is watching and the world is approving of what we're doing.
Right. And of course, now let's get down to the speeches. And I'll be giving a breakdown of these speeches in our subsequent bulletins. But let's start with the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. What do you make of his speech, which was largely about how Kenya and they were not intimidated despite the frustrations by the outgoing regime of Uhuru Kenyatta?
Well, for Rigathi, the thing that came out for me when, through his speech, he talked about, going through hardship, going through, stressful moments, which essentially, well, maybe for his was different in terms of the dynamics of it. But then this is something that most Kenyans go through, or rather all Kenyans go through. And I like the way he ended that, with everything that he went through, he got to realize one thing, that at the end of the day, family is everything. Take care of your family, because your family is what's going to stand with you at the very end. And that was my biggest takeout from there, that, as long as you're with your family and you're standing with your family and you're supporting your family, in your hour of need, they're always going to be there for you.
Right. And of course, there was a lot of mention about how freedom is here now. Mogaka, what do you...
I think when you speak, you have to give credence to the politician who has gone through the wire, through the trenches, through long days and nights, sitting in villages, and looking at every Kenyan and every tribulation and every issue that they have gone through, and considering that the main message from the Kenya Kwanza was that there was a lot of state capture and there was a lot of interference with public officers by the previous administration. When they are alluding to the word freedom is here, they are basically saying that all the yokes that were on all their backs, including their supporters' backs, are all gone instantaneously once they have been sworn into office, and everyone should now get back to work and feel free not to be scared that tomorrow or the next day, whatever issues or legal or otherwise that they were all facing will come.
Right, and their critics are already on Twitter. The first day of office should be gentle for heads of state. What are your thoughts?
I believe that every administration should be given a chance to run its affairs its own way. People criticizing, saying that Dr. Ruto, His Excellency the President, is coming on too strong, should all note that he made promises to Kenyans, and the clock is ticking to the next presidency. If he wants to leave a legacy, he must start tonight, as he has already promised to put 7 judges to work tonight by tomorrow morning. Every administration on day one should be allowed to start as they should and not charge them much too quickly. Give them a month, give them a year, and then come back and start criticizing.
Right.
But we have just come from an election, so allow those who are on the other side to also feel a bit of the salt they're still going through. But I'm sure all Kenyans will be marching forward. Wanjiko is strong.
Okay. And of course, right to President William Ruto's speech. And of course, he has hit the ground running, just talking about of course, swearing in of the 6 judges to the Court of Appeal, as well as addressing the cost of living. He has also mentioned the gender parity, as well as a diaspora ministry. What do you make of, just jumping onto action on day one of being president?
See, as a country, we are already looking at first 100 days in office. First 100 days start today. So he can decide to take his time, but we will judge him on day 100 and say, okay, first 100 days, this is what you were supposed to do, or this is what you've done. And it seems like he understands that, and he is determined to ensure that 100 days from now, he'll be able to stand there and say, I've been able to do 1, 2, 3 things. Clearly, it looks like in the time for today, he's already been looking in that he needs to do. He's been talking to his people. He's, as he says, he's talked to the central bank governor. He's talked to quite a number of people.
Right.
And already we are seeing effects of that. I believe that if he continues with this spirit and, right across, we might just see something different this time.
Right. We're also talking about a man who has been in the outgoing regime as a deputy president. And so when he cracks the whip on these different issues, he was there before, and these things, the gender parity, the two-thirds gender rule, just trying to improve the cost of living, to lower the cost of living, these were still present in the Uhuru regime, which he was part of. So do you think now, just cracking the whip, will it be realized?
One thing I've been talking about, especially when I talk about leadership and when I talk about elected positions, is that many times you find that the person coming in forgets about what the person, and they want to start afresh. They want to start on their own thing.
Right.
I always say that for someone who's going to be able to put the country first, you first and foremost need to look and see what was there in the past, right? Or what had been put into place, and where is it? At what point did they reach? So if it's projects, let's say, that have not been completed, look at them, go through the whole list. That would have been, if I was in that position, I would ask, give me all the projects that are running and those ones that are planned, and I will look to see which of those fit into my manifesto and how do they impact Kenyans. So that I will probably start with finishing up on projects that are already in flight, right? Because again, abandoning them means that there's money that was spent, taxpayers' money, that's now abandoned, and you're starting new projects. So it will be ideal. The same thing like if you look at what Uhuru Kenyatta did. I remember driving past the Southern Bypass at one point, and I saw a big sign, billboard saying, thanking him for the Southern Bypass by Kibaki. So it's about how many projects have you started. And if leadership could understand that, then it'll be, we will see Kenya progress a lot faster. And so, like for him, if he's in a very advantageous position. Why? Because he was in the former regime, so he knows what was in the pipeline, right? And he knows where certain projects are. So I would expect him to look and see where did we go wrong, and start correcting those wrongs. And I hope that is actually what he's doing.
Right. And Mogaka, that was going to be my next question, because he was in the outgoing regime, and so does this mean he is better placed now to govern the country?
I think Dr. Ruto, His Excellency the President, has had a lot of opportunity to learn from being in the previous administration before the acrimonious breakdown during the second term. It's essential. I'm sure he learned that very strongly. So him and his deputy should both come together, both take their ideas together and start this journey together, so that when they come down to the stretch 3.5, 4 years from now, start trying to get the support of the Kenyan electorate to give them a second chance to continue and finish the work they are beginning, they will have done much more than the previous administrations did. It is about teamwork, and now that they have been put into the executive, from the government down to the lowest MCA, they should all work as one unit and deliver for Kenyans, because it is all about progressing our country. It is not about the politics of the day.
Okay, and now the stakes are higher. It's no longer about the campaign promises. Now it's down to business, and of course there's a lot of pressure for the president and his deputy to deliver. Kenyans right now, a crisis in the economy, and of course the price of Kenyans are looking forward to, because as they mentioned, it's going to get down. So what kind of strategy do you think the president and his deputy are going to implement? Because in these first 100 days, Kenyans are expecting to feel a load off their backs.
Well, yesterday in some interview, one of the things I talked about was possibly what direction would the new government take, and seeing him talk about right off the bat, talk about agriculture and talk about fertilizer.
Right.
That is one of the places that he really needs to focus on, because as a country we are capable of being self-sustaining. But then, as it has been, because of cartels and all these things, and I'm waiting to see, because he had said Tuesday after he puts the Bible down after being sworn in, he's going to start dealing with the cartels. One of the cartels that I would really like to see him deal with is especially in the agricultural sector, because we've got great potential. But unfortunately, because of the brokers and the cartels, We've seen that in that actually in the country struggle. Yet, farmers that we have, some of the private entities within the whole agribusiness value chain, they're doing amazing things. We are right now recognized as the #1 exporter in Africa for avocado. And not just avocado, for many other things that we can actually be able to do well in. Truth be told, I'm happy that both Uganda and Tanzania have been talking about banning exports of maize from them to Kenya. Why? Because we can actually all grow our own maize. We've seen our farmers struggle and suffer with maize, and yet, the government has not really been there to support them.
Right.
Talk about when you talk about fertilizer, even in terms of organic fertilizer, we can be able to manufacture our own organic fertilizer, but there's been no framework at this particular point, and that's why you find when we don't have the normal fertilizer, people are not planting. Yet there are others who understand, and some private entities who have huge farms and they're using organic fertilizer, and they're actually at a premium. So I'll really be looking to see. They've talked about the fertilizer. I want to see what other things are they going to put into place. He's talked about climate change. I want to see how they're going to be able to tackle such things as well.
Right. And of course, majoring mostly on production. So do you think that's a strategy that will make realize the cost of living going down?
Yes, I believe that's going to be a strategy that's going to help, bring the cost of living down, because the more focus we put there, we're going to have, even in terms of, the different methods. I've seen, people who, even in city houses, someone is able to plant, whether it's your own sukuma wiki, spices, and you're able to do that in a very small space. Okay?
Right.
Now, if you're doing that, possibly then that means you're not going to be buying those things. And if you're not buying those things, that means you're actually doing a lot better, because at some point you might end up even selling to your neighbors. And so that's how we're going to start seeing the cost of living coming down, because now people are becoming more self-sufficient. Instead of going to the shop, you're going to start growing them yourself. You're going to start making them yourself as well.
And of course, joblessness has been the problem, especially among the youth. And as President William Ruto has addressed, just talking about creating a favorable business environment, as well as creating about 20 markets within Nairobi County. What are your thoughts on this?
A very big portion of Kenya, more than 80% of it actually, live below the poverty line. What does this mean? A household of 3 or 4 children and parents will be making 300 Kenya shillings a day. There is a need to put all of these people to work in productive areas where they will be able to make a sustainable amount of money so that they can survive on their day-to-day business. The hustler movement was based on the common mwananchi, and they used the power of that common mwananchi, which every even would have in their back pocket in the name of an idea, to drive home the message that if we work together from the ground all the way to the offices of the presidency, everyone is going to have enough to sustain themselves and to sustain their families. Because that is all everyone really wants at the end of the day, to come home to a comfortable state of living, food, health, and a home to live in.
Right.
He has talked about 250,000 units of homes every year. That is a very big promise, and we will be watching whether he delivers on those. So from the markets to the homes to where he's directing his agricultural plan. Remember, he was accused of being a chicken farmer as well as being previously the Minister of Agriculture. So he does have work experience in these sectors. Kenyans want to eat, sleep, and wake up with peace of mind. And
Right.
we do hope that that is what he's going to deliver for them.
Of course, and after then Kenyans are ready to see leaders, of course, what President William Ruto and his Deputy Rigathi Gachagua are going to do. But given history, the Jubilee government, for instance, there were a lot of promises, from stadiums to laptops, and a lot of which did not come to pass. So what should Kenyans be thinking or waiting for right now, and as far as these promises are concerned?
Well, in terms of every government that comes will definitely come with promises. Okay. Now, the level or the rate at which they will be able to realize those promises is really dependent on the government of the day. And seeing as it is that, President Ruto, from his humble beginnings, I remember stories are told of, from the time he hosted some of the Kalenjin elders at his place way back, and that's the time that he kind of this journey of becoming, the president, where he started by trouncing the MP at that particular point, Chasire, and looking at his progression all through up to this point. I mean, looking at his speech today, it was all about work. So, in a way, for me, I've got a bit of hope in saying, he's got into to the office of the president. Now, if I were him, I would want to start developing my legacy now. I wouldn't wait for my second term. I wouldn't wait for next year. I would want to do it from now, so that I can be able to make sure that if there's any issues, I'm able to correct them as I go along. And if that's the case, then hopefully we're going to see many of those promises come to fruition. And unfortunately, when President Uhuru was coming in at the very beginning, and I remember a lot of people were saying, this on wealth, he's got the family and everything, so we know he's going to do a good job. That, but we had hoped that we would see that.
Right.
Okay, so even at this particular point, the one thing, and that's one thing that I love Kenyans for, is that we have got a lot of hope and we give chances. So we've apparently given him, a chance to be the president, and we have the hope that he will be able to keep his word.
Right. And of course, let's deviate just a little bit and talk about President Uhuru Kenyatta, just the body language. Yesterday when he committed just to for peaceful transition and just being in agreement and congratulating President William Ruto for his win. So do you think that finally there is goodwill after a long period of conflict?
It is not a doubt in anyone's mind from when President Uhuru was running his campaign for office that he is an incredible statesman. He is one who was even recognized internationally with awards for his statesmanship. When a push comes to shove, you would find that His Excellency, the outgoing president, would always come to the good and always show up for Wanjiko, because Kenya is a country of 53 million people, and he was in charge of those people for well over 10 years, and he would not like that under his administration or through any bereft means, his handing over of power came to any form of a tragic end. It was what was expected, but more so, it was brilliantly done by himself, even though he might have been doing it towards the last minute,
right,
where everyone is allowed a moment to mourn the loss of an election or whatever salt on the wounds they might have had. But when push came to shove, he did what any statesman would or should do, and we do commend him for having the strength of will to hand over power to the opposition.
Saying right now, President William Ruto has just arrived at the State House, which will be his home for the next 5 years. And of course, there is a luncheon that is prepared, and we'll be giving you more details as to how that happens, and of course, what will be the next course of action and procedure. Just does he move in today? What exactly goes on the material day? That is what's happening right now. President William Ruto has just arrived at State House, Nairobi, and of course he is just going to be having lunch, as well as the heads of states who have been invited and the whole entourage. And of course we'll be giving you details of how that unveils. And just to back here in studio, Kisaka, maybe just your thoughts on the same, of how the transition of power from Uhuru Kenyatta to William Ruto, we saw them when he was giving him the instruments of power.
It's very interesting because 2013 because that's the time that at that point the president-elect went to State House, and looking at the body language, we saw what we saw in 2013. The togetherness, the chemistry seemed to be back. The way they were talking and laughing, and even today, by the time when the instruments were shared, and the hug and everything. So look at that body language, and to crown it all, for the president, the outgoing president, to already be given a role, and because President Ruto said he's been doing this, and he will continue to serve the people of Kenya by continuing with that particular role. That tells you that regardless of what happened in terms of politically, even for President Ruto, he sees the benefits and the advantages of having President Uhuru still stay on and do some of those things. He talks about, at the end of the day, we are now, we need to now work for the country, and as a country, we're Kenyans. It's interesting that today I dressed to come to this place. I didn't really think much about my dressing until someone actually shared. Someone saw me and said, it's interesting that your dressing talks about peace, and it encompasses all the parties, because you've got the colors of all the parties. And when I looked myself and I said, it's actually interesting. But it's almost the same thing that we've seen there, where it's not about who did what. It's now about how do we get Kenya from here to a better place, to a better state tomorrow.
Okay, and Azimio la Umoja One Kenya leader Raila Odinga, he declined to make it to the inauguration. Okay, he said he's out of the country, and that he will not be available, and he still believes that the election was not conducted in a free and fair manner, although respects the decision of the Supreme Court. What's Mogaka on the...
Credit to His Excellency the President. He did extend the hand of invitation to the opposition leader, the Honorable Raila Odinga. But just because Honorable Odinga did not agree to it, you do have to understand that he is now the official leader of the opposition.
Right.
And any actions he takes right from day one, as well as being the leader of opposition, will set the agenda for the opposition party. There has been a lot of murmurs and rumors about people who want to decamp from the Azimio movement in favor of joining government. And you might find that his choices not to attend might be an effort to galvanize the strength of his people and his party and his coalition, bring everyone together to prepare for the battles that are to come. They already had a battle trying to choose the Speaker of the Parliament. There are more that will come, as you could see from the speeches of the President. There are a lot of agendas that he has set out for Kenyans. There might be some of these that the opposition will not be in agreement to, especially considering how big Kenya's debt is and where they think our money should be managed. So do not put too much into Honorable Raila Odinga's not attending. He has been the opposition leader for a long time.
Right.
Most of what he does is very strategic. So allow him his time and he will respond to whatever the events were today, and we will be able to prepare for what the opposition will give us.
Okay, and Kisaka, as you respond to that, remember on the day of the Supreme Court judgment, President William Ruto did say that he's not up for any handshakes, and he wants an opposition that will keep the government in check. So do you think the and the opposition?
Well, I don't know whether cordial is the word, but first and foremost, I would say for Raila, he's a man to be respected, and Kenya owes him a lot. We actually owe him a lot. I think there are very few people who have done for Kenya what he's been able to do for Kenya, and sacrificed his life and pretty much everything that has gone into getting us to where we are, and we recognize that and we respect him for that. And at this particular point, for whatever reason that he might not be able to, he wasn't able to attend, he actually acknowledged and said, yes, I was invited by the president-elect at that point directly, but I'm not in the country, and I also have my reservations, which is his right.
Right.
Okay, we cannot fault him for that. I mean, if he didn't have those reservations, he would not have gone to the Supreme Court in the first place. And again, even with the Supreme Court coming and saying, this is what we decided, one thing that about, okay, he's refused. But then the most important thing, and that's what people are not saying, is that he said, we accept the decision. We do not agree with it, we're not happy with it, but we accept it.
Right.
Those words, I would say, have put Kenya in a very, they've made Kenyans be seen in a very different light. And even for Raila himself, internationally as well, to be seen in a very different light, because I would like to believe that if he had not said that, maybe we will not be here today, right? So we need to respect and honor him for that. And going forward, essentially, I am happy that we are not going to have a handshake, and I hope we're not going to have a handshake, because if you really look at it, in the previous government, the moment we had a handshake, that's where problems began, because you already have a manifesto, you have an agreement. And then now, if you're bringing in a different party, unless you're all sitting down on the same table and getting to that agreement, President Ruto, because these people worked hard to be able to be president on a certain premise. Now, if you come and decide and say, okay, we're going in a certain direction, you will need to bring those same players onto the table and discuss with them and have an agreement before you even consider a handshake. So if he's already told these people, we're not going to have a handshake, changing that will now bring problems within his government. And that's exactly what happened in the previous government. When Uhuru went for the handshake, it brought issues within his government. And we saw that in his second term, pretty much there's not much that they were able to do. Why? Because it was more of wrangling.
Right. And let's talk about the political journey of the president, William Ruto. You know that he's a man that has never lost any political seat since 1997 when he vied for Member of Parliament in Eldoret North. So his record, anytime he tries something, he gets in. What lessons are we learning?
Try something, he gets in. And I think, this is my opinion, but I think one of his favorite scriptures must be in the Bible, where it says, when you see an advancing army and you know that they are stronger than you, you will send out an olive branch. You send out, you will call for peace. But when you are sure, okay, that's where it ends, but then, if you look at it deeply, if you are sure of victory, then you go for it. This man has never gone for anything that he's not sure he's going to get.
So it's part of strategy.
It's part of strategy that he has helped others. He's been a kingmaker. He has watched. He has sat in the shadows. He has learned the weaknesses. He has learned everything. He was too confident in this particular election. I kept asking myself, why is he, the smile that he has, the confidence that he has, what does he know that we do not know? But I'll bring it back down to preparation. As I stated, for many of the people who know him, way back before, and he made that decision and said, I want to be president. Then he began to prepare from then. I need to get this seat, and he got it. And every time and every place that he's been, he's learned from the very best. And after learning from the very best, he used that and reconfigure it to be his own way of operations. He's a man. Look at on the day of voting, he was at the voting station at 5:45 a.m. At 5:45 a.m., agents, some of his agents were getting there to find him there, right? And when you look at his work ethic, his work principle, everything that he's done, he's always put himself in it 100%. So it so follows that, if you're going to put in that much investment, chances of you being successful are very high, right? So I would say, as a strategist, I would say he's one of the very best strategists that I've actually gotten to meet.
Okay, Mogaka, what are your thoughts from a chicken seller to president?
Credit to him and the studio. pledged, I think, as Kenyan and as an electorate and as a citizenry, that the UDA movement, Kenya Kwanza, and His Excellency the President were all very organized and spoke with one voice from day one. I wouldn't say that Dr. Ruto His Excellency the President has always been on the winning team. He did support the ODM movement in the 2007 elections,
Right.
even though he did win his seat. So it is all about learning from the best. He did study under His Excellency the late President Moi. He did understudy against his opponent in this election, Right Honorable Raila. He was the deputy president for 10 years under the presidential regime and got to see how our presidency works from the top to the bottom. So using all that experience, a life worth of experience, to prepare himself for this journey, he did come from far, but he did take his time and learn from everyone else, one or two along the way, because politics is never always going to go your way, and used all that effort and all that energy and all those things to bring everyone together around him and form a team that was indomitable all the way to the run for the presidency. And now here he is in State House today, hosting a luncheon with the support of almost the entire planet.
Right. And of course, the hustler narrative, which was a basis of the Kenya Kwanza campaigns, do you think this narrative is one of the reasons that he is now in State House? Did it endear to people, or was it just PR, as critics are arguing?
It is not just PR. When you look at the hustler narrative, it is what took over the entire central region, which was ideally supposed to go the president's way. Even the president's own constituency, Gatundu South, is today a UDA stronghold, with the MP coming from UDA. The hustler movement is almost a populist idea, although I wouldn't go so far as to call the UDA a populist party. But what they did is generate a message that would resonate with every Kenyan who has the power to vote. And most of those Kenyans who have the power to vote are hustlers. They are people who wake up every morning at 4 in the morning to race to the market, to race to the places where they work in construction, to race to the farms where they do their planting and their daily activities, and seeing the presidential candidate sit on a wheelbarrow and dance around a stadium resonated with them in a way that I don't think the Azimio party did. The winds of change started early, and the Azimi and the UDA team took that in stride, and that is the reason they're in power today.
Right. Saka.
You know, watching the whole campaign from the very beginning has kept me feeling like, these guys must have taken time and just sat down and studied how Obama became president. Because essentially, if you really look at it, it's, okay, different continents and everything, but it's really the same thing. And if you look at it, even, and not just even for us here, and maybe not just in the States, we've got keyboard warriors. That's the middle class. It's the hustlers who actually go and vote. It's the hustlers who have filled up Kasarani, coming in from 10 p.m. last night. They don't mind being rained on. They don't mind standing in the sun. They don't mind, that as long as they believe in something, they will show up. For me, I'll be like, okay, I don't want to be stepped on. I don't want to get dirty. I don't want to get tired.
Right.
And so I'll wait and see if it's convenient, I will go. If it's not convenient, I will not go. For them, it doesn't matter what happens. They will be there because they have so much hope and they believe that, if, we get this change and this person is speaking our language, if we put him in, we are possibly going to see something change. Actually went for the mass market, if I may put it that way. And if you really look at it in Kenya, I remember when Michael Joseph was talking about being peculiar people, and that time, if you remember, there were two mobile companies, and one was actually doing better than Safaricom. But then when Safaricom decided and went to the mass market and said, we're going to go down to per second billing, so that the mamamboga can be able to make a call, with that 10 shilling or 20 shilling. What happened to that company? It became what it is today.
Right.
So essentially, looking at this, it's almost giving us case studies that defend the narrative that, if you focus on the masses, on the hustlers, chances of you being successful in what it is you want to do are very high.
Okay, but we're also looking at a race that was very neck to neck. So President William Ruto is coming in to be a president of all Kenyans, even who did not vote for him, who voted for the Azimio camp, which is about 6.9 million Kenyans. So what work does he have to unite Kenyans? We know that politics come with a lot of animosity in this country, although there have not been any reported deaths, any skirmishes in the 2022 elections, but animosity is still there. So what do you think is going to be his work and strategy just to unite Kenyans?
Well, he's already showing us bits of that today, because when he's reduced fertilizer from 6,000 shillings to 3,000 shillings, it doesn't matter what party you're in.
Right.
If you're a farmer, you're happy, you're grateful, you're like, okay, that means I'm going to be able to plant. And it's going to be, chances are if you plant for, that amount of money, that means you'll have some extra money. If you're thinking that you're not going to be able to plant, now there are many people who are not even thinking about politics. They're thinking, because, the short trains start in October, September, October. Some of them have already started. So will I still be thinking about the election we lost, or will I be thinking, now that fertilizer is 3,000 bob, what am I going to be planting? What am I going to be, because my family needs to eat, right? So, the things that have come out of his speech today, considering, and I think he may have done this intentionally, not to talk more about his success in the election, but then about the work that he wants to do. That is the way he has chosen to take to try and bring Kenyans together.
Right.
Because as he said, now I'm going to be the president for those who voted for me and those who did not vote for me. And to prove this, the first thing I'm doing is I'm bringing this down. I'm giving you the judges that you've been waiting for. So everything that he's talking about is for Kenya. And so in a subtle way, he's saying this is a Kenyan, this is a time for Kenya, and we have to look for Kenyan solutions, and these are Kenyan solutions for Kenyan problems, not for UDA or Kenya Kwanza.
Right. Mugaka, what steps do you think he has to take to unify Kenyans?
Uniting Kenyans for His Excellency will be based on the political wins he manages to score that will resonate with everyone. As Kisaka has very well put it, the reduction of the fertilizer will resonate with all the farmers. As a legal practitioner myself, hearing that we have 7 new judges already appointed before the end of today, hearing that all 121 remaining counties, constituencies which don't have magistrate courts will have them very soon, and 7 counties which don't have high courts will also be resolved, means access to justice will come at a much sooner date. You will find that some of our experiences have been difficult. We only have one rent chairman running all the rental cases in Nairobi, which has a population of 7 million people, most of who are tenants. We do need access to justice. We do need access to fertilizer. We do need access to books for education for our children. If he manages to score these wins, it doesn't matter which side of the divide you are on. If you are a farmer in Luhyaland or in Mombasa, you're a fisherman, whether you are going this way or the other way, if your unga price drops, if your fertilizer price drops, if your comfort and way of life gets better, you will acknowledge who gave you this ability to live better, and you will support him.
So it's just about the delivery of promises. That in itself will bring Kenyans together. It doesn't matter which
side of the divide you are on. Both manifestos were extremely brilliant and well put by people who are very in touch with the electorate. And both manifestos were not supposed to just unify one side of the country against the other. The presidential campaigns were traversing from Mombasa to Wajir to Nyanza to Nairobi. They were trying to reflect every Kenyan's needs. So if he delivers in a timely basis, by the way, not just waiting for his second term or trying to hold on to these promises to try to deliver in the second term. If he delivers immediately, Kenya will come together, and you will find they will probably unanimously vote him and his deputy back in.
And do we think that the Kenyan electorate, which includes us, of course, that are now mature enough to see promises being fulfilled, and if not, then they will go back to the ballot and vote otherwise?
Well, I wouldn't say being mature enough. It gets to a place where we've seen people who are mature. I've seen people who I thought they had their heads butted on straight, behaving in ways that, it's shocking. So it comes down to individuals. But, looking at it, and they made promises during the campaigns and, as they were campaigning. One of the things that he has done is, with his speech, his first speech, stating that now, his clearing of port customs and everything is going back to Mombasa. Mombasa, where, if I'm not wrong, they didn't vote for him. I'd rather he lost in Mombasa.
Right.
So you can imagine, these are people who've lost jobs under the previous government and everything. And the first time they're listening to this person as a president, the person they did not vote for, they're being told your jobs are now secure. You're getting your jobs back. The other part of this is I'm waiting to see what they're going to do about Naivasha, because already people are having those jobs in Naivasha. And that is an area now where he actually won, right?
Right.
So it's almost like saying, you're removing, something from your side, your family, or your people, and giving it to the other side, extending to show them that, we are one. I will figure out this side, I will figure out my people, and I'm sure his people must be working to figure out how to handle the unemployment that might result from, this going back to Mombasa. But then, because he had promised them that, and he felt that it was wrong for it to have moved from Mombasa, he's restored that. We need to get to a place where, I believe, if we feel something is wrong, let's correct what is wrong first, and then look and see how to handle the other consequences as well. So for me, I would say that in itself is another way of showing that, he's actually really concerned about bringing the country together,
right,
and galvanizing us together as one unit.
Okay, and let's look at his entry as he assumes office today. We know that there are a couple of things. The judicial reforms he has mentioned, there's going to be more allocation of revenue, there are going to be more magistrates, a service, the police service, which also has been at the heart of his campaign, just saying about the salary reviews, creating a benevolent fund for the police, people in the police service, judicial reforms. There is even the Ministry of Diaspora. Just looking at what awaits President William Ruto, as far as, of course, the police is concerned, as well as the the JSC. Do you think he'll manage to do in just 100 days? Because there's a couple of promises right here.
His Excellency the President is not in this alone. He does have a very able deputy. He does have a cabinet he is yet to appoint, which will be full of professionals, as he has promised us, together with the has a lot on his plate, but being president is a full-time, or stop being president at any point until the next election,
right, or
until the end of the presidential term of 2 terms. So while he does have a lot on his plate, most of these issues will be, they will sit down, because everyone does feel their issue is the most important, but they will try and first steady the ship. We do have a biting fuel shortage that is looming against us. We do have inflation, which has been going haphazardly the whole year. These are things that are immediate concerns to Kenyans, after which, if you start giving them time, you'll see one obstacle after another drop. And if by the time the 100 days is up, they have managed even 50% of them, they will have managed to gain, if not a full success story, enough goodwill from the people who elected them and the people who did not, to give 50% and improve. It's not about giving 100% deliverables. All Kenyans, I think, are aware of this. You cannot be 100% perfect at every job from day one.
Right.
But you just need to give all the effort and score enough successful points and show that you are doing the job as it should be done. You are succeeding at the job, and then from there we will give you time to get your full agenda done.
Right, Kisaka, you know, after 100 days we'll be holding him to account, and in my line of work, that is what we do, just to make sure that on this day, this was said. 100 days later, has this been done? Kenyans are going to be watching. So is 100 days enough to deliver on all of these things?
100 days might not be enough to deliver on everything, but 100 days is pretty much enough for you to be able to put certain projects in flight.
Right.
And one of the things that, again, to the person that we've arguably said has been the best president Kenya had in terms of delivery, who was Kibaki. And what was Kibaki's main strength? Delegated authority. Where I remember at some point he said, I do not expect my people to keep coming to me. You've got a job, do it, right? And, you know, seeing as it is, on his manifesto, one of the things he talked about was security. So for him to stand there today and say, you know, the IG has been under the office of the president's budget, so obviously that means the IG's hands have been tied somewhat, and he could be controlled because he didn't have control of his budget. And now he's now autonomous. He's been given his budget. He's now an accounting officer. That means he's been given the authority, delegated authority, to be able to operate as an IG, right? And if that same thing happens across the ministries that that are going, and the ministers are going to, I mean, the cabinet secretaries are going to come, then in those ministries, them accountable. Because the moment you stop holding them accountable, that's where we have problems. That's where things fall through the cracks. If he does that and pushes his team to be able to work with delegated authority, I think at 100 days we might just be able to see quite a number of interesting things. Maybe not everything we want to see, but then we'll see a few things of those, and we'll see a lot of projects already in flight, and so that we will have something to look forward to.
Right. And he did mention about the maturity of Kenyan democracy. And he talked about campaigns that were based on ideologies. Mugaka, Kenya campaigns, he says, were based on ideologies. But again, largely, communities voted as blocks. So what do you make of that statement?
I do agree that His Excellency the President was correct in that regard, because media, through the newspapers, through the free press who have been granted free rein to generally talk about the issues that are being required, emboldened the electorate, so that you find that you have a UDA governor, such as you do in Nairobi, and an Azimio-controlled city county. You will have politicians who previously would make utterances in public that are not comfortable to charge the crowd and try to get their support. This was not tolerated this time. Politics of tribalism seems to have taken a back burner this time. And if you do look at the final tally, there was only 300,000 votes difference between the parties.
Right. The
governors, the MCAs, and the counties who were there before, a lot of them were overthrown by their competitors with fresh ideas. Were establishment politicians or kingpins of communities, or leaders considered to be the leaders of their communities where they come from. You'll find that Gideon Moi and his outfit, who have previous presidential powers, were not given any way when the Hustler movement came into the region. Kenya has grown impressively well since access to information was made. And it is our hope that the media will be given the freedom to continue its work, and the access to the internet will stretch out into even the farthest parts of the country, so that as Kenyans get to read about their leaders, get to read about their leaders' ideas, and get to read about what is going on in other parts of the country which are succeeding as against their own, they will be able to make decisions as to whether or not the leaders they have with them are doing the best jobs possible, or if at the next election you will find again another elected in because they have not done their jobs.
Okay, and Kisaka, your thoughts on Marx?
Well, looking at it, it's interesting to see, and especially just after the voting, you know, when you're seeing a number of videos and people weren't sure, and this thing was supposed to be going to the Supreme Court. We didn't really have violence in the country anywhere, which in the past would have seen, you know, places burning up. But at this point, even in the places that have been perceived to be hot zones, you know, the people, when you're talking to them, they are saying, you know, we did our job. Now what's left, let them go to the Supreme Court and figure it out there. But we did our job, and we are not going to fight. We want to go back to work. And that's what shows the maturity of Kenyans and the democracy that we are becoming, where people are beginning to understand. It's not about, you know, fighting to the death. I'm not going to kill my brother, my neighbor, just because of these people. Why again? Because in the past it's happened, and then we've had, you know, the same tables and, you know, laughing and talking and joking. And people realize, you know, I lost maybe a brother, I lost a sister, I lost someone, you know, I maimed someone. And yet the people that I was fighting for are sitting and sharing a table.
Right.
Their families are okay. So why are we fighting? And so this time we saw a lot of that where people are saying, no, 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 we were supposed to vote, we voted. Now you guys go and decide. If you did not, you know, if you did not prepare well, it is really up to you. But then now we've done our part. Do not come back to us. It's now in your hands. You and the authorities, the Supreme Court and everything. And that in itself, at that particular point, already started showing, you know, brought confidence even to investors, to businesses, because I'm in the business world, and I have seen, you know, I started seeing, in fact, even before elections, businesses willing to now, you know, continue with operations because they could see there was not as much tension as previous elections. There was not as much uncertainty. People were kind of like sure that how this thing goes, we are going to be relatively peaceful. We are going to be okay. And that actually shows, you know, how we've and how the democracy in Kenya is now beginning to take shape, moving away from, you know, voting along tribal lines, because yes, still in a number of areas that still happened.
Right.
But then in quite a number of areas, again, it did not happen. It actually went differently.
So things are changing.
Things are totally changing. For the first time, for instance, in Bungoma, for the first time ever, you know, President Ruto has actually gotten, he got votes in Bungoma. It's never happened before. In 2013, I think it was 2017. It was 2017 that he was actually, you know, his first visit to Bungoma, he was actually booed, and, you know, those skirmishes, they were chasing him away. But then the same Bungoma voted for him to pretty much almost to the last man. So it shows that, you know, people are looking at things differently now.
Mature democracy.
Yes, it is.
Right. And as we close, Mogaka, what why Kenyans, given that it's a new dawn, there are a lot of expectations. There's still some people who are aggrieved from losing the election and just going forward.
My message to Kenyans, my message to His Excellency the President is we are all together, we are all one country, we are all passionate about our country, and we are all going to be here together and give this country to the next generation. Let us come together now that we have a government with a president, we have a parliament, we have a senate, we have an executive, we have an opposition party. Everyone is set up and ready to do their jobs. Let us wake up tomorrow at the same time as His Excellency the President, go in our country forward into the modern age and even beyond the modern age. We have shown the world that we are a thriving democracy, stronger than the American elections held just 2 years ago. Our first world country came nowhere close in its integrity of an election that Kenya did. We did impressively well, even brilliant. So Kenyans should be happy. Kenyans should sing, Kenyans should go back to work, Kenyans should go back to being creatives and everything else. And let's come back here in 100 days and ask each other, is our president working? And then let's ask each other, if he is, why don't we support him some more?
Okay. Kisaka, what are your final thoughts as we wind up?
All right, for me, I'll just say that, we now have a new president. We have Kenyans who are happy and celebrating. We have Kenyans who are still sad and sorrowful, and I don't want to use the word mourning, but they're not in, they're in dire straits at this time. For some people, it's really big. We need to be cognizant of this and be sensitive to each other. All right, whether your party won or whether you're candidate, we need to understand that at the end of the day, we are Kenyans, and we now need to be able to pull together, because for so long we have seen Kenyans struggling, whether it's along party lines, tribal lines. I think it's time we started thinking about a different way of doing things. What if I did my part and played my part?
Right.
And Eli played his part and you played a part and everyone played their part, and we said at the end of the day, it doesn't matter which party is in power, it doesn't matter who's in power, but if we do our part and they do their part, we will once again be the Kenya that is recognized internationally. As a country, a go-to country, as a pace setter. We've been known for this. We've been known for many positive things. Unfortunately, in the last, in the few, last couple of years,
right.
10, 20 years, things have been changing, and a lot of, we're talking about issues, there's all these things. We never used to have these advisories of, be careful, there's going to be violence, and we saw those advisories even given. And I'm happy with the way Kenyans actually proved them wrong. Right? When you're being told, don't go to Kisumu, don't do this,
right.
We prove them wrong. Now it's time for us to take our place as a pace setter for the continent, so that others, and you see the 20 presidents who came, the heads of state and all the other delegations, they came to witness a change. There's something that they have seen. I don't think in the past we've had that number of presidents coming in for this, heads of state coming in for it. So even the international community is sensing something different. Let's not waste the opportunity that we have.
Well put. Thank you so much, my very able panelist. That is Tony Kisaka, strategist, and Elkanah Mogaka, constitutional lawyer. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being part of this conversation. Right here on Lookup TV, we have been giving you coverage of the inauguration of the 5th President of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei, and his deputy Rigathi Gachagua. Of course, it was an event that was attended by over 60,000, both inside the stadium and outside, and of course heads of state from over 20 countries and a lot of presidents across even East Africa. I am Nancy Nalimmer. Thank you so much for watching, and of course keep a look at TV as we continue to give you a detailed breakdown of how the day has been, the highlights, the color, the speeches, and all things entertainment as well. Thank you so much for watching. Do have yourselves a pleasant afternoon.
Mwanaume ni nani? Mchango wake kwenye familia na jamii ni upi?
Sasa nyingine tunakazana, anaacha baba wife, naenda shughuli kidogo.
Changamoto anazopitia kuiandalia familia ni zipi? Haya ni makala ya Mwanaume ni